This is Get Geared Up with
Bill Booth for a change.
Normally we talk about gear, but today we're going to talk about gear from the past. And so basically I've had this box of photographs that I've been moving around UPT for years, and I've always wanted to sit down and talk to Bill about them. So we've grabbed quite a few of them and we're just going to have conversation about them. Bill, how are you doing?
Pretty good, Greg.
So we're just going to start at the bottom of the pile. And today we're going to talk about Tiny Broderick.
I made my first parachute drop from a hot air balloon in 1908.
Yeah, this is a special photograph that I really love because I am showing Tiny Broderick, the person that made the first free fall jump in the world. As a matter of fact, made 1,000 free fall jumps. I'm showing her the 3-ring and where gear had come, and she's just unbelievable. I talked about breaking away in Maine and going to the reserve, and even though she'd made over 1,000 jumps, she said, "What's the reserve? We never used those." So it was a different breed back then. But this is in 1977 at the Z Hills meet a year before she died. I'm really glad I got to meet her once because she's where skydiving history started. The very first free fall jump was made by Tiny Broderick.
And no one thought about anyone ever jumping from an airplane.
It's amazing that all of the original skydivers were women.
I think they were lighter, and it was kind of funny, yeah. So most of the Edwardian skydivers, when they were jumping from balloons, were women too. There were men in there.
Gotta like it. So equality. We've always had equality in skydiving. That's one of the things I like about skydiving.
Yeah.
So the Paracommander.
Yeah, the Paracommander, that brings back, I was in college. I couldn't afford very much. I made my first jump as a sophomore in college in 1965. And I always wanted a Paracommander, but it cost $250. And I had a job in the summer selling encyclopedias door to door. I got a commission of $125. I sold 2 sets and I got a Paracommander the next day. And that was the first really neat sport parachute. I never thought there'd be anything better. It was a lot of fun, and it's still the prettiest parachute ever made, I think. And if I'll just go to the next picture here, the guy that actually coined the term skydiving and brought free fall techniques from France over here was Jacques Cousteau, and here's a picture of me with Jacques Cousteau. I was positioned at a right time where I got to meet all these people that made history, from Tiny Broderick to Jacques Cousteau. So he started off the static line system we used and marketed the Paracommander, my first sport parachute. Now the next parachute I got after the Paracommander was the Delta II Parawing, the Regalo Parawing. This is before Ramor's now. And this thing was great. It was the first parachute that really flew about 2 to 1. It was a lot of fun. I maybe put 350 jumps on it. And the guy that marketed the Delta II Parawing was Steve Snyder. I have a picture of Steve Snyder here. Steve Snyder also went on to market the first Ramor parachute, the first wrist-mounted altimeter, the first automatic opener, and Steve made the first hookup freefall jump, a baton pass. So he was really instrumental in early skydiving, and again, I got to meet him and work with him specifically on the Ramor Reserve.
What was the first AAD that he developed?
The Sentinel, and it was electronic. It fired a piston that pushed the pin out or pulled the pin, and we had it for years. And then he got sued and he gave up. He wouldn't put him on the sport market anymore and went straight to the military. So we lost automatic openers until Helmet brought it back with the Cypress.
That's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate. The lawyers cost so many lives by denying us automatic openers, but that's the way it goes.
And then from there, square parachutes got developed, and that must have been a pretty fun time.
It was. The guy that developed square parachutes here, Dominic Jalbert, shown working with me years later. He was a kite designer, not a jumper, but he patented the Ramor. And it took Steve Snyder to bring the Ramor to market with the paraplane. There I am jumping one of Steve's paraplanes. This was the first commercially available Ramor. You'll notice a couple of things. The lines are about 30 feet long. There's no slider yet and no stabilizer panels. This thing was pretty much a hop and pop vehicle. I got knocked out, I think, 7 or 8 times.
And that was just pretty normal.
Yeah, they're really hard openings. I thought these were beautiful because every time I look up, I'd see stars. When someone tells me they had a hard opening, I go, "Oh yeah, how long were you out for?" Because he used to knock us out. Anyway, I took a lot of hard knocks on this thing, and then the slider came out. A guy named Greg Rau developed it for Pioneer Parachute, and then I found out later that the same guy that invented the ripcord and the spring-loaded pilot chute invented the slider in 1951 for round parachutes, and it was forgotten. That's why history is important. We would have saved a whole lot of hard knocks, a lot of blown up canopies if we had looked at the past and put the slider on the Ramor at first.
That's one of the things that I've noticed in skydiving is, people will start talking about things these days, and I'm like, yeah, we learned that lesson quite some time ago.
Some time ago, and again, people that don't know their history are going to repeat it. So this slider was invented twice, which is really kind of funny.
Obviously you invented the first backpack harness container system, where both the main and the reserve were on the back, and the Wonderhog was one of your original designs.
Yeah. I wasn't the first person to make a piggyback system. That belongs to Dan San Abbott of Security Parachute Systems. But what he did was take an existing backpack and take an existing front-mounted reserve and just stack it back there. Mm-hmm. What I did was I designed the first integrated container system that was made from scratch with the reserve on the back with the Wonderhog. And the Racer came out at the same time, but again, the Racer was a front-mounted pop-top I put on top of a little one-pin container that Paraflight had made to introduce the Stratostar. Mm-hmm. So the Wonderhog was the first, purpose-made piggyback where everything was for brand new. And as we went on, the Wonderhog developed and its hand-deploy pilot chute and the through and release. These were really important. So we had the integrated container system, the hand-deploy pilot chute, and the through and release with a Ramor in it by 1976. And since 1976, we're 2024 now, there's been no more real development in container systems. Even the static line was introduced by Dan San Abbott on the first security piggyback. Well, I was a static line instructor at first, and I made my first jump static line. But I was always worried. I taught people what would happen if there was a malfunction, but I didn't know. Some people, I looked at their eyes, and I think, this person's going to die if anything happens. Why can't I take them with me? Why can't I go with them on their first jump? You learn to drive, you learn to fly with an instructor. But parachutes wouldn't support it. Tandem on rounds wouldn't work, right? Tandem on early Ramors wouldn't work because an early Ramor rig for one person is bigger than our tandem rigs today. They were crude, they opened hard, and they had impossible toggle pressures. So between Ramor coming in 1972, it took to 1982 before Ramors got small enough and light enough so you could put two of them on the back of one person that could handle two people, and had toggle pressures that didn't kill you. And so in 1983, that's where these pictures are coming from, I took my secretary and made a tandem jump. Tandem had been going on for a long time. The first tandem I ever saw was an old poster from 1910. Two people coming down under a single trapeze from a balloon drop, not free falling or anything. And then tandem was used in movies. There was always a movie scene where the airplane's on fire, there's two people in one parachute. So they jump out holding onto each other. And so the idea was not new at all. But making it practical was. We had to figure out two things. Ted Strong and I were working on this at the same time in 1983. We figured we could do it. We knew that because we've been taking children for the past 8 or 9 years on regular skydiving gear, all right? But not two full-size adults. Next thing we had to figure out is, should we do it? Was it a safer way to learn? And it took a lot of years before it turned out that it was. And I mean, rather obvious, but there was no drogue, and we free-falled with very big suits. The drogue complicated tandem, and I knew it. It made it much more dangerous, but it made it safer in a way too. And with the Sigma, I made the drogue less dangerous than it was. The first tandems with the drogues released by 3-rings didn't work out very well because it was not designed as a tandem rig, and the Sigma was, and so that's why the Sigma's pretty much taken over. Tandem was a hard sell at first. This next picture is the president at the time, Ronald Reagan's son, doing a tandem jump for Good Morning America. And after that little bit, people really wanted to do tandem because the president's son did it, had a good time.
Yeah, if it's safe for him.
It's safe for him. Yeah, it seems safe for everybody. So that was the first really important tandem jump televised.
This morning, Ron takes us up where the air is fresh and the fall is free.
It was another shot that you pulled out here. It's my doing tandem jumps in the early days out of Mr. Douglas. What's neat is Mr. Douglas is coming back now. We're refurbishing our old DC-3. I made thousands of jumps out of them, and I can't wait to get back up. Yeah, it's going to take 45 minutes to get to altitude, but it's a lot of fun.
When you can dirt dive a 16-way inside the airplane on the way to altitude, yeah.
People used to pack inside the airplane on the way up. It was that big.
So we have one more picture. This is one of my favorite rigs, and I just like it because of the fact that it's got fur on it. So, and I know there's some stories about this. So why don't you tell me about the Mink Rig?
I'm jumping the Mink Rig. Well, for my 10,000th vector, I want to do something special. So I figured, well, I'm going to pad it with mink. And I went to a little tailor shop in Daytona Beach, and I found a used mink stole. And I bought it for not very much money. And I made all the comfort padding and a little mink on the back. And so I jumped it a few times. There was a jumper back then called Judy Norton Taylor. She was on the Walton. She's the one that said "Good night, John Boy" at the end of every Walton's film.
Night, John Boy.
She had become a Playmate bunny because of that when she grew up, right? She saw the rig and said, you know, I think I can get a photo shoot for Playboy in this. And she did. And she's jumping out over LA in a nice white teddy. So this rig made Playboy.
Gotta like that.
The last rig we made, we have one in the Smithsonian now that Alan Eustace jumped. So
the guys at United Parachute Technology came up with this idea, and I wanted to come back safely.
That's another proud rig.
This has been a great conversation with Bill Booth, and hopefully we can do some more of this someday. And thank you for joining us, and don't forget to
like, share, and subscribe. Greg, did I steal your thunder?
You most certainly did.